I don't often speak about issues related to gender on this channel, and it's mostly because I don't think it's my business to tell adults how to live their life. I just don't think it's any of my business. I think that for every single person, the very best thing that we can do is extend basic consideration and courtesy in our interactions with them. And it frankly drives me crazy when people on the right will go out of their way to purposefully misgender people, purposefully call them by the wrong names. Caitlyn Jenner is a perfect example of this. Anytime I talk about Caitlyn Jenner anywhere, I get people in the comments going, he or Bruce. And guess what, guys? You win no one when you do that. You look petty, you look hateful, you look ignorant. Caitlyn Jenner made the choice to transition after a lifetime of experience and knowledge and wisdom, and I'm sure a lot of careful thought and reflection, and I'm sure that was an extremely difficult decision to make, although she did come out and say that it was more difficult to come out as a Republican than it was to come out as a trans person. But generally speaking, I think that adults should be able to do whatever the flip they want to do as long as they're not hurting anyone else. That's not to say I don't have opinions on some issues. I have a really hard time with the medical transition of children, purely because the desistance rates are significantly higher when children transition before they reach adulthood than they do afterwards. And, I've listened to a lot of my trans friends talk about how they are not actually in favor of medically transitioning children. And I have to take that seriously. Listen, these are life-changing, body-altering situations, whether you're talking about taking hormones or having surgery. Some of these things are irreversible, and I don't believe that a child who has not fully formed the logic function of their brain should be making that type of decision. I don't care if they transition socially. I don't care if they change their name or their pronouns or doing any of that stuff. The medical transition stuff I do have a harder time with. The other thing I have a hard time with is trans women playing women's sports. And this is simply an issue of fairness for me. And it's not that I don't want them playing sports. I do want them playing sports. I just don't know what the correct answer is. I want them to feel like they're included. I think sports have a lot of benefits. And I think that they should have a place where they can play. I just don't know the right answer to this. But I do believe that it is fundamentally unfair for someone who went through male puberty to then compete against women. And I do ultimately believe that women are going to suffer when trans women are competing against them in the same category. I'm sorry, that's just what I believe. And I don't think that there is a good answer to this. I mean, maybe other than having all trans people compete in the men's category. I mean, if there's really no physical difference between trans women and women, then why can't the trans women, if there's no physical biological difference between men and women, which is essentially what they're arguing when they're saying that trans women and women aren't any different. They're saying, well, there's no real biological difference between men and women. Well, if that's true, then why can't the trans women play in the men's category? I don't know. But I do think that we're about to come to a head on this particular problem. And I really believe that this right here could actually be the turning point. This is from the Post-Millennial. Biological male set to dominate in women's Olympic weightlifting in Tokyo. Weightlifter Laurel Hubbard, who took home the gold at the 2019 Pacific Games, will likely continue to break records at the Tokyo Olympic Games. Hubbard is a trans woman who would be competing in women's categories at the international sporting event. And then we've got a photo of her right there. Now listen, I want Laurel to be able to compete in sports. I do. I want her to be able to compete in sports, but I do believe it is fundamentally unfair for her to do it at an elite level. Listen, when we're talking about the Olympics, when we're talking about elite college athletics, when we're talking about these higher categories of people competing, we're talking about minute differences between these athletes, making the difference between success and failure. And so then you can throw trans women in there, and their differences are not minute in the grand scheme of things. They're absolutely going to dominate these categories. And what I think is going to happen in this situation is she's going to win a gold medal. Absolutely 100% going to win a gold medal at the Olympics. And it is going to be international news. And when that happens all across the world, we are going to see photos of this trans woman atop the gold medal podium with biological women on either side of her. And all of a sudden, this is going to become extremely clear for maybe a lot of people who haven't thought about this issue, just want things to be fair, just want trans people to have the same opportunities. I think when it's presented in this stark a term on the world stage at the Olympics, at the highest level of competition that someone can reach, I think the decision's going to get made a little bit easier. Weightlifter Laurel Hubbard took home the gold at the 2019 Pacific Games, will likely continue to break records at the Tokyo Olympics. Due to the new rules put in place by the IOC for COVID, Hubbard is basically guaranteed a spot on New Zealand's women's weightlifting team in the super heavyweight category because so many competitions were lost during the pandemic year. Hubbard, who at 43 would be the oldest weightlifting Olympian competing, hasn't yet been named to the team, but an International Weightlifting Federation insider confirmed to The Guardian that she would automatically qualify because of amended rules approved by the International Olympic Committee. That insider told The Guardian that while teams did not have to be named until the 5th of July under the new qualification rules, which have come into the effect after several competitions were lost due to COVID-19, Hubbard was sure of a place in Tokyo if fit. Hubbard transitioned after entering adulthood as a male for 35 years and retained all the advantages of having grown up male. Hubbard has reduced testosterone levels to the point where the International Olympic Committee allows the transgendered athlete to compete against women. Hubbard's 2012 transition enabled her to win many titles over biological women for whom the competitions were made. And this is where we're going to come to a head, folks. It's going to come to a head. What happens when you all of a sudden have the Olympics, the biggest sporting event ever, the thing that takes over our TV every night, and we have a trans woman atop the Olympic podium? This is going to be a wake-up call for people who maybe haven't been paying attention to this issue, who maybe, didn't want to think about it. Oh, it didn't affect them, so it's not part of their life. This is going to be beamed into their living room at night. And there's going to be photos of Laurel Hubbard against her female opponents. It actually might have been her. I vaguely remember there was a weightlifting competition. I'm pretty sure this was her, with her on the gold medal podium and two Samoan athletes, two Samoan women on either side. And I believe this was like at a world championship a couple years ago. And she was very proud on the top with her gold medal. And the Samoan women, the biological women, just had their heads hung. And it was such a stark picture. Actually, let me see if I can find that picture right now. Here it is right here. Here it is right here. Here is the photo that I'm talking about. Let's even make it a little bit bigger, maybe. Look at that. Look at that. Standing atop the podium with her medals and the women on either side of her looking down. And this created a little bit of an uproar in their country. This created an uproar when this happened. What happens when this happens in the Olympics? Listen, I'm sorry, I'm sure many of you are powerlifting super fans or whatever, but no one pays attention to powerlifting in non-Olympic years. No one was paying attention to this except people who are actually interested in this. And now all of a sudden, this is going to happen on the Olympic stage. This is going to kill this entire idea when the general public sees a trans woman who is obviously physically different than biological women winning their gold medals. This is going to be the game changer. Mark my words. So I actually think that this is a good thing. I think that this will bring the discussion to a head. And frankly, like I said, I think that trans women should have an area where they can compete in sports. I just don't know what the best solution is, but I am sure beyond anything that it is not trans women competing with biological women. That is not a sustainable solution. It's going to kill women's sports in the long run. And it's going to, there are so many women out there who have worked their entire lives only to have a trans woman come in that has a completely different body, has gone through male puberty, lived for 35 years as a man before transitioning to be a woman, which is an act that takes bravery, but that doesn't mean that it's fair that you're competing against them. And when this happens on the Olympic stage, I think that's going to be pretty dang clear. Alright guys, that's all I have for this video. If you enjoyed it, let me know what you think in the comments, maybe giving it a thumbs up, subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. If you think you're subscribed to the channel, YouTube unsubscribes people like every dang night, man. Every flipping night. So if you think you're subscribed, just double check it for me. That's all I have for right now. I'll see you soon.